Today we're going to be talking with Marveina Peters. She's an investor and a real estate developer with a wealth of experience, most of which is right here in Los Angeles. All right, Marveina, thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate it. It's great to see you now. I've known you for a long time.
Thank you. Good to see you again, Chad.
I don't know how many years it's been, but it's interesting that our paths are meandering. I know we both have diverse paths on how we've gotten into real estate and out of real estate, and a great space to be in. So today I was actually hoping just to explore a little bit more about your path, and you're investing and developing in LA, and so am I. And so I thought it'd be great for us to get together and find out a little bit more about that.
Sounds good.
Cool. So maybe we could start off with Teresa Peters Executive Realtors. You're partnered with your mom, and just wanted to find out about how that came to be and what it's like partnering with your mom. She started it 30 years ago, and you've been in it a long time as well. So you guys are a wealth of experience.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. So my mom is the broker of Teresa Peters Executive Realtors, 30 years experience. I grew up in real estate. Actually, both of my parents are brokers. So I was one of those kids at 13 years old. Remember years ago in the 80s when real estate agents was door knocking and, friendly neighborhoods.
Oh, yeah.
And they were bringing their kids. I was one of those kids holding the pamphlet for my mom as she would door knock and introduce herself into communities to earn business. So I grew up in real estate as it is from the age of 13. And, I began along this path of an investor. I actually had no interest in sales. When I was 21, I purchased my first home and became an investor. And I actually did not even know what that meant. But my parents made me buy a piece of property at 21.
Was that here in LA?
Yeah, right here in LA.
Okay.
I never moved in. Very sheltered individual. I never moved in. I bought it thinking, I'm grown. I wanted to move in. But what happened was I ended up renting that property out. Once I rented that property out and realized the returns I was getting at 21, I knew that was a path I wanted to go in and become an investor. So that's kind of where it started with me personally in investing at the age of 21, to begin with, being really forced into real estate because of my history and my family background. So fast forward to today. In 2009, my mom and I partnered at Teresa Peters Executive Realtors, where we offered also not only real estate sales, but services, including property management. And so that's where we are today.
Cool. It's interesting. In my previous business, I owned a lighting company, and I actually worked with my mom for a while, probably for about, 4 or 5 years. And it was interesting because I actually loved working with my mom. And I told her this, I'm like, we have a better relationship working than we did like personal relationship. And so I actually really enjoyed working with her. Like I said, it was maybe 4 or 5 years. And then the business got kind of big, and she, stepped aside, and we just went off in this other direction. But it was great. So what's it like working with your mom?
That's an interesting question.
And keep in mind, she might watch this. So
I'm going to be very careful with my verbiage.
Yeah.
So my mom and I, we have a great relationship, and we want to maintain that personal relationship. So for us, identifying clearly defined roles was essential for us.
Mm.
So we like to use the word role and not job. Her role as a broker is to brokerage deals. Anything that has to do with sales, that's her lane. I don't cross over in that lane. And anything that has to do with my clearly defining role is to manage asset and seek investment opportunities. So raising capital.
Mm-hmm.
she doesn't cross over into my lane at all. We stay out of each other's zone, and the two actually doesn't cross at all, unless there is a liquidation of an asset. Then I will package that deal and hand deliver it for her to now brokerage it out. Yeah. And that's how we're able to maintain like a quality, successful business and not, cross over into, our personal lives at all. Yeah. I like to use, so you are a sports guy. Have you ever ran track?
Yes.
Okay. So
I did the 2-mile race.
Okay. So have you ever ran a relay?
Yeah, but I was a long distance guy.
Okay. So I like to.
I know about the baton.
The baton. That's where I'm getting at. No two people hold that baton at the same time. Yeah. So we really had to utilize that kind of, and it took some years to come up with this strategy and utilize that business model in our business, because personal and professional are getting very much intertwined with the snap of a finger. And you don't want to cross any lines where it'll, upset the family in any way either. So if I'm holding a baton, only I'm holding that baton. And my race could be 2 years, it could be 5 years. But once that asset is ready to be liquidated, then and only then is when I'll pass the baton to my mom to take over, and vice versa. If she's holding a baton on any type of asset or property, sometimes I'm not even in that race at all. Sometimes I have nothing to it's a whole different team that has to do with that race, and I never touch the baton. Yeah. But that's the business model that we have to stay in constantly, and now it's effortless. But that's the model that we use. It works for us.
Yeah, well, that's great. I mean, I was excited to talk to you because we're both in the LA real estate space. And for CSQ Properties, we're actually just entered into escrow on another building in Long Beach. So
congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, we're very aggressive in the space, and I know you guys are as well. So I wanted to hear a little bit more about what you guys are doing or what you're doing in terms of the development space and investment space in LA. What are you seeing out there currently?
So with investments in particular, we're focusing, and our focus always have been, on affordable housing. So as real estate developers and investors, oftentimes I'm approached with deals which deviates from affordable housing. But by the time I finish that project, I have figured out a way how to tie in affordable housing, either a program or any type of subsidy by the time that program is over. By the time that project has been completed. Many times it takes me sometimes 2 years to complete a project. It's just what it is, in development. Yeah. And so for us, so the numbers are alarming. Let's just start with the numbers. There's 5 million Americans that are receiving rental assistance and or some type of housing subsidy, period. Of that, 68% of those individuals are seniors, families with young children, or disabled individuals. Now, in Los Angeles alone, I don't know if you know this, but 20% of the Los Angeles population is living in poverty. That's 1 in every 5 individual or family is living below poverty. So there's a huge need for housing assistance. Now, our rents are high. LA County, the rents are pretty high. Yeah. And if you have 1 in every 5 families that's making less than, now this is pre-COVID. I don't even know what the numbers are now with COVID. I don't know. I would argue that no one has accurate numbers as it pertains to COVID. However, pre-COVID, 1 in 5 families are making less than last time I look at the numbers, I think it's about $30,000, 27 to 30. I don't know the exact number, but the last time I looked at the numbers was about $30,000 a year. Well, how can you afford to live in Los Angeles making $30,000 a year to feed a family?
Yeah.
So our investment programs or our investment strategy, excuse me, is going to be and has always been around affordable housing projects, and how can we work with various cities to offer better quality of life in the housing arena.
So are you partnering up with the cities on these development projects? Or are you doing
Absolutely.
Okay. So how, I mean, you mentioned like a long lead time with development. How is that different? Like if you're partnering with the city or some sort of government agency versus private development, I know you've done private development as well. How are those timelines different, or are they not?
Oh, there's a huge difference in timeline. And so the personal or development, it's still underway. One does not supersede the other, excuse me. So many times what will happen is cities will come up with a 5 or 10-year economic development plan.
Mm-hmm.
When they come up with that economic development plan, most often than not, housing and or affordable housing is a part of that plan. That's a 5-year strategy on average, depending on the city and depending on the district. So when you partner with the city, any city, in my experience, it's a much lengthier process to get your projects approved. And the red tape is, how do I say? It's
real.
It's real. Like, yeah, you see, I'm being careful with my words, with my verbiage. The red tape is real. Yeah. So it could be a bit stressful. It could be a bit, it's definitely time consuming. The benefit in the end for me and my investment portfolios that I'm managing absolutely outweighs, on the front end of the, it's more beneficial.
Sure.
And for all parties.
And you're still able to get good yields and returns for your investors with that approach?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, okay, so the development project is one thing. The affordable housing part after the project is finished is a whole different ballgame.
Yeah.
So we opened this conversation talking about developing units. Now, the yield are coming from getting those vacancies filled. That's where the yields are coming from. So once we have a project completely finished and we're ready to go, this is where I would contact the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD, and register that building under what's called Section 8. And or any other type of housing subsidy program. I like Section 8 personally.
Yeah, it's we've run across quite a bit of Section 8 in Long Beach. And it's interesting because some investors love it and some do not. And I've noticed it's kind of like hot or cold with Section 8. I've got a few tenants that are Section 8. I don't have full buildings that are Section 8. I haven't had any issues. And in fact, during COVID, it's kind of nice to know that the government is backing up part of that rent, which is nice. But I also have heard some pretty tough stories on Section 8. So I think it goes both ways like anything else.
Yeah. In my experience, it boils down to the screening process.
Yeah.
And not deviating from, whoever your property management company is, and not deviating from the strategy that they use to filter out bad tenants regardless. Yeah. Because a tenant is still a tenant regardless how much they earn. They're still responsible adults in Section 8 that wait a pretty long time to get approved off of that very lengthy list.
Yeah.
So in my experience, those tenants are not willing to sacrifice their Section 8 voucher for, destroying your property or, whatever it could. But I know there's some horror stories out there.
Yeah.
But that goes back to, properly vetting your tenants and doing a very thorough job in vetting the tenants.
Well, what about, you've been in the business a long time. You got to have a lot of cool success stories. What's one exciting or interesting story that you'd like to share with us as we wrap it up here?
Okay, I'm going to go back to when it all started in the development space for me. We talked about the investment space in 21. In 2010, when the housing crisis was recovering from, the whole housing crisis in 2008, 6, 7, 8. So 2010, the country was recovering from the housing crisis. There were a ton of vacancies I had access to via our clients, and all our clients wanted to do was fill those vacancies. Because I knew there was a big gap that needed to be bridged with victims or survivors of domestic violence, I figured out a way of bridging that gap between survivors seeking safe homes and the massive amount of vacancies that I had access to. And through various nonprofits, through a government contract, I was able to house at any given time 3,500 women and children a year. Wow. And provide them safe homes. Now, I bring that up because a couple reasons. So providing not just a roof over these families' heads, but a whole safe home. There was a team of us that came together and provided even, a strategy if you were ever found, moving people around from one house to another. So there's a whole strategy set in place. And I am most proud of that moment. And that moment opened other opportunities for me that I had no clue that I would fall into from the investment standpoint and truly saving people's lives.
Yeah. That's amazing. That's a cool story.
Thank you.
I knew you'd helped a lot of people. I didn't know it was 3,500. That's a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot of people that all over LA County.
Yeah.
So there was so nonprofits and government agencies there's a different fund that assists domestic violence survivors.
Yeah.
And so with that said, we were able to help a lot of families get out of very horrible situations.
Yeah. Yeah, one of my pet projects, as you may know, I run and operate a sober living home for women and children.
I do. I love that.
And I've only got maybe 15 or 18 women and children in there, but it's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work. You for sure need a team.
Yeah.
And this is over a course of time. It's a lot of work.
Yeah. Well, great. One more question.
Yes.
What about any advice you'd have for investors that are looking to get into the LA market or see the potential that LA has and all the programs and the weather and life that we have here? Any advice you have for investors looking to invest here in LA?
I would go to the city's website and look up the economic development plan for that city. The city of LA have 9 districts. Each district offers a different plan. There's a wealth of opportunity that can be had in LA if you know what district or what area to invest in. And typically, if there is a district that's undergoing their 5 or 10-year strategic plan, it's going to include housing. You could rest assured
Yep.
housing is going to be a part of it.
Okay. Yeah. And I guess if the investors don't want to do that work, they can either call you or they can call me. If the investors that did want to do that work, how can they get a hold of you?
Oh, Marveina at Teresa Peters Office.com.
All right. Perfect. Well, this has been great, Marveina. I know you're a wealth of experience.
Thank you.
We didn't even talk about your police work. We'll save that for another episode. But no, this has been really great. Thank you so much for sharing your time and expertise with us. And we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, Chad. You have a good one.
As Marveina mentioned, there's lots of opportunity here in Los Angeles. If you're interested in investing with CSQ Properties, please reach out to us at csqproperties.com, Facebook, or Instagram. As I mentioned, right now we're in escrow on a new property in Long Beach, and please feel free to reach out if you'd like to learn more. Thanks.